you you like there's this sense underneath you that I just am better than where I'm at. That I was made for more. Doreen and I never get together and talk about the song she's going to play and the message that God has given me. But that's exactly the word that God gave me this week. Is that uh, we're coming up to uh, graduation season in a couple weeks. All over the United States, there's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of teenagers released out into the general public through this thing we call high school graduation. And it reminds me. I remember my high school graduation. It was a few minutes ago. People ask me, they say, well, what year did you graduate? And I tell them it was 1976, 50 years ago. My wife and I graduated together. And I tell people it was like 2 years after God invented dirt. It feels like that. It feels like it's been forever ago. But I remember that day. I remember walking out of the gym. We had our graduation in our high school gym. And I remember the feeling of like, look out, world, here we come. Not in a bad way. Now today when I see it, I'm like, look out, world, here they come. It's a whole different thing. But back then, do you remember that? Do you remember that feeling of like, we're going to go do something positive. We're going to make a difference. We're going to save the world. And I I remember that feeling. Well, there's a story in the Bible I want to share with you out of the book of 2 Kings, in chapter 5. And it's a man by the name of Naaman. In 2 Kings chapter 5, it says, now Naaman was the commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded. So this man Naaman was he was what all of us at one point in our life thought we were going to be. I think most of us, and I don't know if it's all of us, but I think most of us at some point in our life when we were young, we had high expectations of what our life was going to be, things we were going to do, things we were going to accomplish, good things, positive things. Uh, I think most people have that sense in them that they were put here on this planet. They were created by God to accomplish something. And Naaman was obviously one of those guys. He was a military leader. He was highly regarded by his king and for his military acumen and the things that he accomplished even as a young man. And he had high expectations of what he was going to do with his life. I think most of us are like that. How many of you women, whenever you heard the story of Cinderella for the first time, did you relate yourself to Cinderella, or was it the ugly stepsisters? It was Cinderella. Those stories that we heard when we were kids. Those and the all of the movies and even the cartoons that we watched. We always watched them and read them, and every time we related ourselves to the hero in the story. And I always saw myself as like James Bond. I was going to save the world, literally. That was always how I saw myself in those shows, in those movies, in the books that I read. It was always the hero, and all of those stories. They all had sort of the same theme. There was a villain, and there was somebody who was threatening the whole world, but there was this one man who stood up, and with just a few seconds left to go, he defused the bomb, or he managed to get the nuclear device shut off that was going to kill billions of people or maybe destroy the whole planet. And I always related myself to that man, to that person, that God had made me to be something. to accomplish something. And Naaman was that guy. Not only was Naaman accomplished in by the world, but there's a line in here that most people overlook when they read this story. It says he was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord God had given victory to a ram. A lot of people miss that part of the story. They think that because Naaman was the general in a heathen army, they missed the part where he was actually God's man. It says what he was able to accomplish in the world, and what he was put here to do was part of God's plan. And just a side note to that, understand something. God is doing things in the world that you and I have no understanding of. And a lot of times when we look at something and say, "Oh, that's a bad thing. That's a horrible thing," a lot of times the God is in that. And so Naaman was one of those guys. Not only was he highly regarded by man, but he was fulfilling or doing, or he was becoming the thing that God had made him to be. And every one of us in this room, every person in the sound of my voice, I believe that you were put here with a purpose, with a reason. And if you're like Naaman, you know in deep down inside of you that you were made for something big, something great, something that you were going to accomplish, something you were going to be. So it says that the Lord had given him victory, and he was a valiant soldier. But wouldn't it be great if we could get rid of all the buts in the language? Because that word "but" changes the whole picture of Naaman's life. So Naaman was a great man. He was a big man. He was doing big things. He had a big destiny. But it says, but Naaman had leprosy. He had a disease that was so vile and was so horrible that it literally was eating his life away. See, Naaman, everything was going good. He was on track to become one of the greatest military leaders of all time. He was on track to 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 do big things. But somehow the wheels came off. And I think about what I was talking about a minute ago, that high school graduation. Remember walking out of the gym, remember walking out and thinking, wait till they see what I can do. Wait till they see what we can accomplish. But then something happened along the way. And all of a sudden, something derailed or caused those plans and the dreams that you had to somehow either come to a halt or got pushed off on a sidetrack. And today you're looking at your life and you're not understanding, how did I get here? This is never what I intended. Every year it seems like we go to these high school graduations. And as these seniors, they walk across the stage and they all talk. They give the speech. They say, this is John Jones, and John Jones is like, he's got so much of a grade point average, and he's done this, he's played sports, and he's been on the member of the chess team, and so forth and so forth. They give their whole thing, and then they say, and John is planning on going to some college where he's going to be a nuclear physicist, or he's going to be a doctor or an attorney, or he's going to be a teacher. And whatever it is he's planning on doing, it's always something good. You never hear of any, you never ever have gone to a high school graduation where a kid walks across stage and says, oh, John is planning on working McDonald's for the rest of his life. Or John is going to become a ditch digger. You never hear that at a high school graduation. But yet, how many people, and maybe you can relate to this, how many people feel like that's exactly what happened in your life? Somewhere along the line, something happened. Just like Naaman. Naaman got this horrible disease. Leprosy was a terrible, horrible thing. And it was nasty because there was no cure for it. Absolutely none. When you got leprosy back then, it was basically the end of your life. But the only thing is, it just didn't kill you like that. It was a long, slow disease that literally would eat away the flesh from your body. It would start with just a small rash, maybe on the back of your hand or maybe on your arm. You'd see just a little bit of a rash or a spot. And at first you would ignore it. You might not even see it. Maybe it'd be a little bit itchy. And you would think, oh, it's just some kind of a bite or something, and you would ignore it, but it wouldn't go away, and the rash would get bigger and bigger, and finally you would have to break down and realize this is something serious, and it would start to get white and scaly, and then you would maybe go to some sort of a physician or a doctor, and he would look at it and he would say, that is not good. And you would be diagnosed with leprosy. And there would, just like today, when you would go to the doctor and the doctor would say, that's not bad, that's not good. Then you would say, well, what can I do about it? That would be the very next thing that Naaman would ask. What can we do about it? And the doctor would say, nothing. And he might ask, well, what's going to happen? And the doctor would give him this horrible news that, yeah, it's going to spread through the rest of your body, and sooner or later, your whole body, your skin is going to turn white, and it's going to this rashes, and then it's going to start to literally eat the flesh of your body away, and it's going to be a long, slow, horrible journey. I remember reading a story when I was a kid of there was I think a leprosy colony over in India, because back then even they didn't have a cure for it, and so they would put these children that had leprosy in these sort of like colonies, and they would live there because leprosy was very contagious, and so they had no cure for it. And so not only were you faced with the very skin of your body flaking off and things like that, but then you had to be isolated from everybody that you knew and loved. You couldn't have human contact. When in the Bible, it talks about how lepers, when they were out on the street, they had to call out as people would come near them, "Stay away from me! I'm unclean! I'm unclean! You got to stay away from me! I'm dirty." Can you imagine the horrible living condition? I'm sure Naaman wondered at this point, how did this happen to me? How did someone like me, who was created and designed and given this huge destiny, and now all of a sudden I have this disease that is going to literally destroy my life and is going to steal everything I've ever wanted to be? I remember in that leprosy colony in India that I was reading about, they had a problem because at night when the children would be sleeping in their beds, the rats would come in at night and literally nibble on their fingers and toes because they had lost all the feeling and they wouldn't feel it. And little children would go to bed at night. When they wake up in the morning, they would be part of their fingers and toes would be eaten off. And it's just like a vile, disgusting thing. And Naaman had this disease. He had everything that he was going to be was taken from him. And I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but sometimes it feels like that in my life. Because I know down inside of myself that I was made for more than what I am. And I remember, and I still, and see, the reason I know this is from God, because it's still in me. It's still in me. And sometimes I look at my situation and I look at my life and I think, I thought I would be farther along than this. I thought I would be accomplishing more. And Naaman found himself in that position. But he knew that he was made for more. Well, it just so happened that Naaman had a little slave girl that was from Israel. And when she found out about Naaman's disease, she told her mistress, Naaman's wife, that was what her job was, to take care of Naaman's wife. She said, I wish Naaman would go to Israel because there's a prophet there. There's a prophet there that could cure Naaman. Now remember, there was absolutely zero cure for leprosy. That doesn't mean that there weren't a lot of ideas floating around. Just like today, when you get bad news like that and there's no hope for it and there's no cure for something, you'll grasp at almost anything. And I'm sure back then there were charlatans and there was people that were trying to make money off this deal. And I'm sure they told people, listen, if you got leprosy, if you eat this, drink this concoction that's made out of goat urine and toad livers, and then mix up this stuff and drink this, this will cure you. None of it worked. And so Naaman, when he found out he had this incurable, horrible disease and that his life had been sidetracked and derailed, he heard this little girl that said, "Hey, there's a prophet in Israel that can help you, that can cure you." And so Naaman went to the king and told the king, because the king and him were friends. Naaman was part of his inner circle. And he told the king, he said, listen, he said, I heard about this. He said, I don't know if this guy can help me or not, but right now I'm willing to try anything. And he said, thank God it doesn't involve goat urine and toad livers. And so Naaman, the king says, yeah, go check it out. Find out what you can do. So Naaman he gathered together a bunch of, he took gold and silver with him, and he went off to Israel. And he met with the king, and there was a letter from his king. And the one king said to the other king, I'm sending my servant Naaman to you so you can heal him. And the king says, what am I going to do? I can't change this. I can't do anything about it. And he was all distraught because he thought the king was just trying to pick a fight with him by asking him to do something he couldn't possibly do. And but then the prophet Elisha heard about what was going on. And so he contacted the king and he said, listen, he says, send Naaman to me and I'll take care of him. And so in verse 9, it says, so Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. It says Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, now notice, Naaman is at the door of the prophet's house, knocking on the door and says, hey, I'm the fellow that has leprosy, and I believe you can help me. Elisha doesn't even go to the door. It says he sent a messenger out to talk to Haman. Now, I looked this up in the original Hebrew. That word messenger is actually the same word in the Hebrew that refers to like an angelic messenger, a messenger from God. And it's important to understand that today, because today God is going to speak to you and he's sending his messenger. He has already spoken to you today. You know, and you've heard in your spirit that the voice of God is in this room. And he has sent his messenger to you, and he is here to tell you something. And so this messenger comes out, and at Elisha's behalf, he says to Naaman in verse 10, go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. This week, as I was listening to God and as I was walking with God, and I was asking God, what do you have for your people this week? What message do you have? And here's the message God has for us today. Just like Naaman, who was made for more than what his life, than the path that his life had followed. God is saying today, I am in the restoring business. I am here to make everything and set everything right. And just like the prophet told Naaman, he said, you need to go down to the Jordan River. Now, the Jordan River is, it's a very prominent place in the Bible. That's the river that the Israelites crossed to get into the promised land. That's the river that was sort of the line of the borderline between the world and Israel. The Jordan River has a very significant prominent place in the Bible, but the truth of the matter is the Jordan River actually is not much to see. It's more, as in some places, it's not much more than like a small creek that would run through. It's not a big, spectacular river. I remember when I was a kid, I'd hear all these stories about the Jordan River. And they would talk about being baptized in the Jordan River and so forth. And I always pictured it as this like the Mississippi or like the Amazon or some big uh, monstrous river, and there would be boats floating on it and so forth. It's actually not like that. It's actually not much more than a small muddy creek that runs through the body. And so when Naaman found out that he was supposed to go and the instruction was, he said, you need to go and dip yourself in the water 7 times of the Jordan. He said, why? Because if you do that, then your leprosy will be cured. Your flesh will be made whole. Here's the thing today. There's a river flowing through this room. It's the river of grace. And God today is inviting each one of us who maybe we feel like our life has been sidetracked a little bit. Maybe we thought, oh, I was going to accomplish so much, but here I am. I'm getting older, and I haven't accomplished what I was going to be. Maybe you started out. Remember your wedding day, and you thought, wow, we're getting married, and we're going to live happily ever after, but it didn't work that way. Somehow along the way, the wheels fell off. Maybe it was high school graduation for you. Maybe it was later on. Maybe it was earlier before that. But at some point, it feels like your life was derailed. And today, God is saying, if you will come and you will dip yourself in the river of life, in the river of grace, I will restore you. I will make yourself clean. Now, I know what the liar says. The liar says, you're done. Your life is over. You'll never be able to amount to what you thought you were going to be. You made too many mistakes. Too many bad things have happened to you. Some of you, you feel like Naaman. Naaman didn't ask to have leprosy. He didn't ask for this disease. He didn't do anything to cause it. It just came from nowhere. And sometimes you feel that way. You feel like your whole life something happened to you, there's something abusive or something traumatic, something that stole your innocence, something that stole your purpose in life. And it feels like your life, instead of that sort of upward trajectory that you thought you were going to be when you were young, somehow along the way that trajectory quit going up and now it's going down. And you feel like every day that you wake up and you ask yourself this question, how did I get here? But I have news for you today. The messenger from God is saying, if you will go and dip yourself in the river of grace. Now, it's important to understand a few things about this river. Because when Naaman got this message, when the prophet told Naaman, go dip yourself in the Jordan River 7 times. I'm going to explain to you the importance of why he had to do it 7 times in a minute. But he said, if you will go dip yourself in the Jordan River, you will be cleansed. The first reaction that Naaman had, he said, ooh, that's a disgusting river. Why couldn't I just go back? He said, I remember the rivers of Arbana and Pharpar that were in his home country. And these were glorious rivers. These were glorious. These were rivers that cities were built on and trade was taking place on. And they had clean, fresh water and entire civilizations were built on these rivers. And they were the glorious, spectacular places. And Naaman said, why couldn't I wash in one of them? Why did I have to come all the way over here to this godforsaken place and dip myself in this nasty, dirty, disgusting river that is nothing? But the instructions from God was, you need to humble yourself, and you need to realize that you need grace. This river that flows through this room today is the river of grace. It's the river of grace. That river is flowing through this room, and God is saying to each one of us today, come and dip yourself in this grace. Now, something else that Naaman had to do, because when Naaman was angry, he wasn't going to do it. And the people that were with him, his aides and his advisors, they said, listen, if God would have asked you to do something big, if he would have asked you to go attack another country, you would have done it. If he would have asked you to do some big spectacular thing, you would have done it. He said, why not try it? What have you got to lose? And see, that's what the liar does to us. He tells us, listen, for you to be restored, you have to make up for all of the mistakes and all of the things wrong in your life. You have to do something great to make up for your lack. And God said, no, all you need to do is you need to come and dip yourself, fully immerse yourself in the river of grace. God is inviting each one of us today. And the message is simple. The invitation is simple. Come and immerse yourself in my grace, because my grace will restore. He's not asking you to do something spectacular. He's not asking me to go out and accomplish some big thing. He's simply saying, come and immerse yourself in the river of grace that flows through this room. Naaman finally decided, I'm here. I might as well do it. Hopefully nobody will find out about it. And he went out into the river. And it was not a pleasant experience, because he had to fully submerge himself in it. Now, here's the thing about this river of grace. This is not a river where God is saying, hey, if you just come and just dip your toe in, you'll be okay. It's something that each one of us have to fully immerse ourselves in. It's something where you have to let go of all of your pride, all of your ambition, all of what's you, and you have to immerse yourself in his grace, in his love, and fully trust that he can restore and bring you back to life. A lot of us sometimes feel like Naaman did, like our life is just rotting away. Our very flesh is just being eaten away. And God is saying today, if you will come and you will dip yourself in this river, if you will submerge yourself in the river of grace, I will restore you. Now, first thing about this is, every one of us are like Naaman. See, when Naaman was born, he was born with the leprosy in his body. Now, it took a long time in Naaman's life for that leprosy to come out, to reveal itself. But the very nature of that disease is it's something that is put in him from birth. He was born with that in him. Same thing is true of each one of us. The very thing that derailed our life was something that was put in us from birth. Because we were born sinful. We were born needing a Savior. And the very first experience that we've had with that river of grace was for our salvation. Because every one of us that knows Jesus and every one of us that has eternal life, at some point in our life, we had to come to that river of grace and we had to submerge ourselves in that river. It happened to me when I was 10 years old. I was laying in bed one night and as I was laying there, all of a sudden it dawned on me. I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up knowing the Bible, hearing the Bible stories, knowing about Jesus. Not everyone had that privilege, that opportunity. I was born into a family where my mom and dad were Christians, my grandparents were Christians, and I knew all about Jesus. And I knew all about salvation. But that night, as a little boy, when I was laying in my bed, I was laying in, I was getting ready to go to sleep, and it dawned on me, if I die tonight, I'm going to hell. Because I knew that I was a sinner. And in that moment, I knew that my mom and dad, even though they were really good people, were not good enough to save me. And so that night was the first night that I fully submerged myself in that river of grace. And I came to Jesus that night and I cried out to him. I said, Lord, I'm a sinner and I need salvation. And I immersed myself in that river of grace. And that was the night that my eternal, secure salvation was taken care of forever and ever. From that moment on, I was a child of God. And nothing can separate me from him. Not because I'm good, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not good. Not because of anything I've done or said, but it was only because of what he did. It was all about him. It was all about his grace. And that night, I became a child of God and I trusted Jesus as my Savior. That was my first experience in that river of grace. But notice in the story of Naaman, the prophet told Naaman, you need to submerge yourself 7 times. Now, in the Bible, the number 7 is the number of continuity or continuing. So whenever you see that number 7, whenever somebody was told to do something 7 times, what the message was literally is you're going to need to do this over and over and over and over again. It's not when it says 7, it's not the 3 plus 4 equals 7. It's the number of eternity. It's the number of constant redoing and redoing. Now here's the thing about salvation. And I want to explain this to you because if you trusted Jesus Christ as your Savior, your salvation in as far as your home in heaven is secure. You only have to dip yourself in that river one time to receive salvation. But the problem is, even though our spirit gets saved and our spirit is safe for forever, we still have to live in this sinful body. And so the reason the prophet told Naaman to dip himself 7 times or over and over and over again was because this river, even though today you dip yourself in this river, it will clean your flesh. But you're going to have to be prepared to go back into this river many, many times. There's a beauty in that. There's a glory in that. Because if you're like me, and you probably are, you're going to find out that no matter how strong your will is, and no matter how much you determine that you are going to live a better life, that you're going to make smarter decisions, that you're going to quit making mistakes, you're going to find out that tomorrow, guess what? You're going to make another mistake. You're going to screw up again. And when that happens, guess what? The river is still there. Now, here's what I like about this story. And this is what God pointed out to me when I was reading the story. When the prophet came to Naaman, he said, if you go dip yourself in the river, he said, your flesh will be clean. See, if you're a child of God, your spirit is secure. It's locked away where the liar can't touch it. He can't touch that. He can't get between you and God. He can't destroy your spirit. That's why the liar never attacks your spirit. He always attacks our flesh. Because that's where our sin is. That's where our weakness is. And so the liar comes and he attacks our flesh, but God said, "No, this river will cleanse your flesh." Not only will it cleanse it, he told when Naaman dipped himself in the river, the seventh time when he came up, it says that his flesh was just like it was when he was a young boy. He was completely made whole. He was completely cleansed. See, the liar is trying to convince us that you need to clean your life up. You need to start behaving better. You need to start making better decisions, better choices. And if you do that, if you jump through all these hoops, eventually you can get to a point where you can sort of get back on track with your life. The problem is we all know that doesn't work. We've all been trying that for years and years and years, and it just doesn't work. What God is saying, no, I'm here today and I'm offering you a better way. If you will come and you will immerse yourself in this river of grace, if you will lay everything down, all of your worries, all of your fears, all of your despair, all of the things that have been holding you back, that have been keeping you from being what you were created to be, I will restore you. I will restore you. I will make it like it was when you were young. You remember that feeling when you were young, when you were ready to change the world? I don't even know what that statement means to you, but I'll guarantee you, someplace down inside of you, you have that spark, that knowing that you were made for more than what you are right now. Every one of us has a different story, but every one of us have the same story, because every one of us, our lives have been sidetracked at some degree. But God is saying today, if you will trust me one more time, if you will come and dip yourself, and you will come and immerse yourself in my grace, in my restoring grace. He's saying, I don't need you to bring any of your excuses, any of your logic, any of your reasons. I don't even need you to bring any of your plans or methods or whatever it is that you're thinking. Well, if I can do this, if I can go to enough meetings, or if I can maybe do enough good things to offset the bad things that I've done or said, or if I could just make the scales somehow more balanced, and let the good outweigh the bad. That's what the liar wants us to do. But God is saying, you don't need to balance anything. All I need you to do is come and dip yourself in my grace. The river of grace. Folks, listen to me. The river of grace is flowing through this room today. Now, here's the thing. We need to get used to that river. We need to never get too far away from that river, because I promise you, you're going to need it again tomorrow. If you will come today and you will just tell God, God, I am giving up. I know that sounds like a weird thing, because the world tells us to fight, get stronger, make something out of yourself. And God is saying, no, I don't need you to do that. I need you to become weak. I need you to lay everything down. And I need you to just immerse yourself in my grace. Trust my love to restore and to make you like you were, to bring it about. I was thinking about this and I thought, the liar, Sometimes he convinces us that if when we fall down, that we have to go all the way back to the beginning of the race and start all over. And that isn't what God's saying at all. He said, when you come and you get in my river, yeah, you're going to pick yourself up, but you're going to start from right where you are. When Naaman came out of that water, it says his flesh was like that when he was a little boy, but he was still a man. And even though the leprosy had derailed Naaman, when he was cleansed and he was made whole, his life picked right back up from where it left off. I wish I could look around the room and look in your eye and I could say, I know what God put you here for. I don't have that ability. And I don't know what God made you to be. But I got a feeling down inside of me that you're like me. God made you to be more than what you have been at some level. And God is saying today, if you will come and dip yourself, if you will come and wash yourself in this river, I will restore you. One of my big fears today as I was planning this was I thought, what if they think I'm the river? I'm not the river. In fact, if anything else, I'm standing in the river. And I'm inviting you as the messenger from God to come out in the river. I'm like you, I need the river. I need God's grace. I can't tell you how many times I have had to come to this river. It feels like almost every day when I wake up, I feel like I got to go get in the river. I got to find that grace. I've got to, and it's like all these things run through my mind, and it's like the liar says, well, what about this, and what about what you haven't done, and what about these failures, and today I stand in the river of grace. I think I've been in the river so long that the fish know my social security number. But God, listen to me. God is standing here before you today, and He is inviting you to a fresh start, a new start. And I don't care what has come before this. If you will humble yourself like Naaman had to humble himself, and you will immerse yourself in this river of grace, I promise you, God will restore your flesh. He will clean you up. Now, it's true. You might have to go back and visit the river tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. I know I have. And that's why it's important to understand that the river is always running. God's grace is flowing freely all the time. God is here today, and God is in the restoration business. I want to play this song for you once again. Doreen tried to steal my thunder because this song spoke to me so much. But I want to play it for you one more time. It's a different version. But listen to the words of this song.